At precisely 10:45 p.m. on June 20th, 1947, a gunman carefully sets his sights on an unsuspecting figure sitting in the living room of an exclusive Beverly Hills home. 9 shots ring out. Minutes later, 41-year-old Benjamin Bugsy Siegel lies in a pool of blood. The man who many will call the father of Las Vegas is dead. Who killed him? More importantly, why?
When Siegel was killed, it was generally assumed he was not some sort of, victim of chance. It was clearly a hit. It was clearly a contract.
It wasn't our case. It wasn't LAPD's case. It was Beverly Hills' case. But the only thing that bugged me was they tried to put it as strictly a gangster hit. And I kind of thought that maybe it was an inside job.
You know, a man who betrays his wife is one thing. A man who betrays his mistress that's not nice. So I believe he was killed over a romantic adventure. You deal with Italians, you're going to find romance somewhere.
What does anyone have to gain from his death? Where do the answers lie? His murder shocks the public, yet reinforces the Hollywood illusion of how a gangster lives and dies. Today, little is actually known of the real Ben Siegel. Myth and fact blur in the annals of organized crime's undocumented history. Was he a brutal killer for Murder Incorporated? We know he was a loving father. A shrewd businessman who built the prototype of the classy Las Vegas hotel. A gambler who organized illegal betting activities in Los Angeles. He's also a handsome mobster at a time when Hollywood starts romanticizing gangsters through the movies. Ben is a stylish dresser, a charmer, a criminal who slums with the Hollywood elite. Given a different start in life, he might have become a movie star. Ironically, it's Siegel's life and crime that Hollywood captures on film. But who was the real Ben Siegel, the gangster who fascinated us as much as any movie star? 1906, America's a nation on the move. Teddy Roosevelt rides roughshod in the White House. Suffragettes march for women's right to vote. San Francisco reels from a devastating earthquake. In Brooklyn, New York, immigrants Maurice and Jenny Siegel welcome the arrival of their first son, Benjamin, on February 28th. Sensing no future in an establishment that offers immigrants few opportunities, 11-year-old Ben leaves public school to take up with a street gang on New York's infamous Lower East Side. At age 12, he teams up with another dropout, Mo Sedway, to launch a protection racket on pushcart owners. It isn't long before Ben makes friends with another neighborhood delinquent. 4 years his senior, Meyer Lansky becomes a profound influence on Ben. Meyer Lansky is a Jewish immigrant from Poland. Well educated for the times, Meyer uses brains, not brawn, to make his mark. In the years following World War I, the newfound friends established the Bug and Meyer mob, dealing in gambling, the protection rackets, extortion. And in the early 1920s, the phenomenally lucrative business of prohibition. Around this time, Ben's bouts of explosive behavior earn him the nickname Bugsy.
When he'd been a hood, he would take any assignment. The more difficult, the better. And he was considered erratic because he would do things that were really dangerous. So they said he was Bugsy.
A lot of people used to call him Bugsy and the Bug because he was Bugsy Nuts. And it was a very demeaning name. You wouldn't call Bugsy Siegel Bugsy to his face. He was always Benny or Ben. He hated the name, and hearing the name Bugsy would drive him Bugsy.
My father was a Siegel's barber. Someone was in the shop at the same time one day and drifted over to my dad's chair and said, "Good to see you, Bugsy." And Siegel went red. My father, being, I don't know whether it was brave or just feeling very comfortable with Siegel, said, "Do me a favor, please." He said, "The man only meant to be friendly. do me a favor. He said, for you, Harry, okay. And he went over and shook hands with the gentleman and gave him a pardon, I guess.
Like other gangsters, Ben idles his hours away in movie theaters. But unlike most, he mouths the lines aloud with the stars on the screen. His fellow mob buddies are completely bewildered by such behavior, not failing to note this is just another reason to think him a little Bugsy.
Ben Siegel loved Hollywood because he thought he was good-looking, sexy, attractive, and he thought he was a ready-made movie star. He was such a vain man that Hollywood was a natural attraction for him.
Ben also allegedly works as a for-hire killer, letting Lansky loan him out to other mob bosses. This becomes the forerunner of the infamous Murder Incorporated, as classified by the FBI, a gang of professional assassins.
Ben Siegel was a killer because that's how you got your start. But I don't think there was Murder Inc. I mean, there have always been hoods in every big city, and if you wanted someone killed, you made a phone call and made a deal, and it happened. But Murder Inc. is you know, it's the Inquirer.
Lansky and Siegel's friendship extends beyond business. In 1928, Meyer acts as best man when Siegel marries his childhood sweetheart, Esta Krakauer. In 1930, Meyer introduces Siegel to mob boss Charles Lucky Luciano and his racketeer pal, Joe Adonis. This new alliance leads to Siegel's so-called big break when he takes part in the assassination of a rival gangster, Joe the Boss Masseria. The hit solidifies Ben's position with the Sicilian Italian gangsters. As a mob ambassador, he travels around the country lining up local rackets and racketeers in Luciano's crime syndicate. Around this time, Ben meets a pretty girl in a New York club who will one day change his life forever.
Virginia Hill was fooling around with Joe Adonis, and Ben Siegel and Joe Adonis had a personal rivalry going. Ben Siegel approached Virginia Hill strictly to have sex with her to get back at Joey Adonis.
Though just a one-night stand, it's one neither of them will forget.
Virginia Hill said when she was sleeping with Benny Siegel it was the best sex she ever had.
By 1937, rumors arise that there's a price on Siegel's head by rival gangsters. Though he's never arrested, he's also getting more heat from the NYPD, so the mob hierarchy sends him west.
There was a lot of pressure on New York gangsters from District Attorney Tom Dewey, and it wasn't until shortly afterwards that a lot of them start, you might say, fleeing to more prosperous climes, and they all picked California.
Siegel likes the idea. He's always been enamored with Hollywood. It will give him a chance to hobnob with movie stars, enjoy the year-round sunshine, and build a new image for himself. Moving to Los Angeles has nothing but rosy possibilities. Yet it's a move that will seal Siegel's fate as a crime legend. Los Angeles in the late 1930s is still a relatively undeveloped city, spread over 500 square miles. Dominated by the movie industry, Hollywood seems synonymous with Los Angeles to the rest of the world. Al Capone first takes an interest in Los Angeles when he takes control of several film unions. Eventually, the Chicago branch of organized crime edges into other rackets, led by the Dragna family, under patriarch Jack Dragna.
The Dragna family ran slot machines and things like that. It was kid stuff, you know. There was no organized crime. There was disorganized crime.
But as LA's population grows, so does the potential for big money in illegal activities.
In 1935, the New York and Chicago mobs had basically come out here and they had a little war going over control. It basically got divided up that the New York mob took the gambling, drugs, and prostitution, and Chicago kept the unions and the movie studios.
As freewheeling and wild as a crapshoot, Los Angeles in the 30s harbors the ideal environment for organized crime. Though gambling's illegal throughout the state, police and politicians are easily bribed.
In the 1930s and 1940s, there was a lot of gambling in Los Angeles. A lot of it used to take place in the expensive nightclubs. They would have back rooms, and a lot of movie stars would go in, lay down some very heavy money. And a little bit prior to that, there were gambling ships lined up outside of Los Angeles.
They were just casinos, and they operated, I think it was outside the 6-mile limit. They were, you know, old ships that had been converted, usually tramps.
Police keep tabs on mob activities through informants, like the city's leading madam, Brenda Allen, who runs a bordello up in the hills above Sunset.
To get the information you need in the police departments, you have to consort with the underworld. I mean, you can't get it from church. A lot of it was what they call pillow talk. Brenda Allen and her type would usually trade that type of information for maybe not just strict enforcement on their activities.
When Siegel arrives to split the Dragna family's empire, Jack Dragna begrudgingly cooperates on orders from Chicago. But the tenuous relationship pits Lucky Luciano's New York boys against Dragna's Chicago ties. Siegel soon controls horse racing at Santa Anita and boxing at the Olympic Auditorium. With anywhere from $50,000 to $2 million from the New York mob, he sets up the Trans-America Wire Service, which allows hundreds of bookies to take illegal phone bets. It's a hefty initial investment, but pays off with an annual income of $8 million. Siegel rents a mansion from opera singer Lawrence Tibbett at 326 McCarty Drive in Beverly Hills for his wife Esther and daughters Millicent and Barbara, seen here with Ben's parents in rare home movies. Protective of his family's privacy, Ben carefully keeps them from public view. This is the first time these films have been shown. Wanting to get acquainted with the film crowd, Siegel hooks up with an old friend from his Lower East Side days, actor George Raft. Siegel often visits Raft on the set of his various gangster pictures at the Warner Brothers lot. Watching the filming, Ben bets that he's probably a better actor than Raft.
Benny Siegel and George Raft had an interesting relationship. George Raft was a popular movie star who was a gangster wannabe. Benny Siegel was a gangster who was a movie star wannabe. So they sort of lived each other's lives vicariously. The flipping of the coin that George Raft always did got from Benny Siegel. And that became George Raft's trademark.
The gangsters were anti-establishment. The movies glorified them. And people are fascinated with Siegel because he was what they imagine a gangster should be.
He was a glamorous gangster. Most glamorous people, they're either movie stars or they're in other walks of life. You don't look at gangsters as glamorous. Lucky Luciano was this little tiny seedy-looking guy. Al Capone was a big fat pig. Here you have Ben Siegel, who is good-looking. He didn't fit the stereotype of a gangster.
Bugsy Siegel dressed immaculately. Beautiful clothes, beautiful suits, gorgeous shirts. He was a dapper man, very dapper.
He throws $10,000 parties at popular nightclubs, attends movie premieres at Grauman's Chinese Theater, hangs out at illegal gambling parties in private Hollywood mansions.
There were always rumors that Ben Siegel took a screen test set up through George Raft. Keep in mind that the Chicago mob controlled the studios. The Chicago mob would have stopped him.
And traditionally, unlike their Chicago counterparts, the New York syndicate craves anonymity.
In those days, the trick was not to be known. In fact, Luciano complained that he never got into any trouble all his life until his name was in the paper.
Further transforming his image among the social elite,